Like many of you, I'm all for stacking therapies, whether it's because they're synergistic and work really well together, or even if it's just to save some time. But there are definitely times where combining therapies, especially with hyperbaric, could negate some of the benefits that you're trying to get, or even worse, become potentially dangerous. And that's what we're going to cover in today's video. I'm Dr. Jason Saunders, founder of HBOT USA. I've been practicing hyperbaric medicine for over 20 years. And in our clinic, we also combine a number of different strategies. We have healthcare providers, including chiropractic, massage therapy, acupuncture, and functional medicine. And we offer a number of different modalities: red light therapy, laser therapy, sauna, acoustic sound wave, PEMF, and a number of other therapies. So both in my personal life, for my own health optimization, but also when we're treating patients, trying to get the most out of their experience, getting them the results that they're looking for, we are often combining different therapies and different strategies and different modalities together to really help make sure that people are going to reach their goals. That said, I'm very particular about which ones we do and when, as I believe my role in this office is to make sure that patients are getting the most return on their investment while being incredibly safe simultaneously. When it comes to the content of this video, none of the things that we're talking about today on their own are bad ideas or dangerous. But when it comes to the timing of them, especially in and around a hyperbaric session, that's where we want to become much more detailed in terms of when to do it, how much to do it, when not to do it, so that we're getting the most out of it and we're keeping everybody incredibly safe at the same time. We're going to start this conversation around hydrogen. The awareness and the usage of hydrogen gas has grown exponentially over the last few years, and we use it all the time. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool, and it pairs really well inside of the conversation of health optimization. Without going into incredible detail around what hydrogen is and how it works, we've done videos on that in the past, which we will link to in the description below. But as a summary, and I know that I'm not doing it real justice in this moment, but we're going to say that in the end, hydrogen acts like a selective antioxidant. As most of you probably know, free radical damage and oxidative damage is one of the major causes of so many chronic illnesses. Having a strategy in your health optimization plan that includes antioxidants, particularly something like hydrogen, which as a selective antioxidant is as powerful and in many ways much safer than other high-dose antioxidants that you might be using. From a hyperbaric standpoint, hyperbaric actually stimulates oxidative stress purposefully. Again, we've done a number of different videos on that topic, which we could add to the description below as well. But just to understand that even though hyperbaric does raise oxidative stress, it does so strategically and incrementally in a way that doesn't actually add oxidative stress to the person, especially long-term. It actually upregulates the patient's own antioxidant system. So the net result of repetitive hyperbaric isn't increased oxidative stress. It's actually increased antioxidants. Hyperbaric is a hormetic stress. It raises those antioxidants by stimulating strategic amounts of oxidative stress. So in many ways, the effect of hyperbaric and the effect of hydrogen are actually opposite one another. So how do we utilize that strategically from a general plan of health optimization? It really depends on how healthy and resilient the person using hyperbaric is. The incremental and strategic amount of oxidative stress that hyperbaric stimulates in a person going in a hyperbaric chamber is really one of the most powerful and most important components of the hyperbaric session. Utilizing hydrogen water or hydrogen inhalation right before or even during hyperbaric is likely not going to get you the impact you're looking for, because it's going to start to blunt some of the real benefits of the hyperbaric session. We would still use hydrogen and hyperbaric, even potentially in the same day. We would just separate them by hours rather than minutes. Either doing some hydrogen inhalation or hydrogen water in the morning and doing an afternoon or evening hyperbaric session, or vice versa, getting in the chamber in the morning and doing the hydrogen inhalation or hydrogen water later in the day. By separating these two, you're going to help extract the full benefit of each one of those strategies, and they're not going to be negating one another. If somebody's more fragile, a number of autoimmune diseases or other conditions that make them even more sensitive to oxidative stress, in those cases, I might purposefully use an antioxidant, particularly hydrogen, prior to the hyperbaric session, because I want to blunt some of that impact, at least short term, until that patient is resilient enough to tolerate the oxidative stress from hyperbaric on its own. So again, this isn't good or bad in a vacuum. It's fully dependent on that patient's health, their level of resilience, and what goals that patient has, and how to best reach them utilizing two different strategies. The next conversation is going to go into IV therapy. With IV therapy, there are a number of different IVs we could be considering, from NAD and methylene blue to a wellness IV that maybe has a number of ingredients, including some antioxidants, all the way through oxidative IVs like high-dose vitamin C or ozone therapy. As a general rule, again, it's going to come back to patient tolerance, patient resilience, patient level of health, and of course, the patient's health goals and making sure that we're doing the best we can to help them reach them. An IV that's loaded with antioxidants would be very similar to the hydrogen conversation. Do we really want to load a patient up with antioxidants prior to putting them in a hyperbaric chamber? We might be blunting the overall impact of that hyperbaric session. In a sicker, more fragile patient, that could be totally appropriate. In a moderately healthy patient or in a healthy patient where we're trying to get the most out of each therapy we're utilizing, we want that oxidative stress to be the main signal that's helping to push the pathways that they're looking for to get the most out of their hyperbaric experience. So it's not wrong to do an IV on the same day as hyperbaric if it has antioxidants. It just might not be appropriate to utilize an IV loaded with antioxidants right before or even right after the hyperbaric session. And just like the hydrogen, having a few hours on either side of the hyperbaric session, in my opinion, is the right amount of time to have maximum impact from both strategies without interfering with one another. What about an IV of methylene blue or an IV of NAD? These are incredibly synergistic, don't interfere with one another, and the synergy of mixing oxygen with methylene blue or oxygen with NAD is pushing very similar pathways, but at an exponential level. So combining those two could help maximize that strategy overall. So that could be incredibly appropriate to do in and around that hyperbaric session. What about IVs that are also oxidative? So now we have high-dose vitamin C or ozone IV. Both of those are oxidative therapies. Hyperbaric is an oxidative therapy. Is it appropriate to combine those? Again, the answer is it depends on patient tolerance, patient resilience, and patient goals. If we're trying to maximize oxidative stress for the purposes of certain conditions that would be appropriate, then yes, there's a lot of synergy between utilizing the oxidative stress of hyperbaric, the oxidative stress of high-dose vitamin C, and or the oxidative stress of an ozone IV. Now, if that patient, again, is fragile, they have a number of health concerns, health issues, a diagnosis that may make them less resilient, perhaps combining them is just too strong, in which case maybe Monday doing hyperbaric, Tuesday an oxidative IV, Wednesday hyperbaric, Thursday an oxidative IV, as an example. Separating them purposefully until that person is more resilient and actually can tolerate all of those therapies in a singular day. All of that needs to be thought through and really strategic as, again, our first job is to do no harm. We can't push these people too quick and combine heavy oxidative therapies before their bodies are willing and able to accept them. We will get right back to that video, but real quick, there are a number of rules and regulations and best practices that you need to know in order to be safe and compliant and run your practice accordingly. If you're not sure that you've got all your bases covered, we've created a free checklist for you that maps out everything that you need to become compliant inside the hyperbaric industry. You can grab that checklist for free by clicking the link in the description below. And now back to our video. The last thought I want to bring up around IV, especially from a before or after standpoint, has more to do with patient comfort and office policy and office flow. As you can imagine, one of the things that most patients need to do pretty quickly after an IV is use the bathroom at least once or twice in a relatively short period of time. As a result, in our office, we tend to not do IVs before hyperbaric. Having a patient do an IV, even use the bathroom, and then get into the chamber only to 20 or 30 minutes later need to get out of that chamber in order to go to the bathroom again would really interfere with their session, but also with your office flow. So as a general rule for us, even if we're combining any of those therapies that make sense to create that synergy, we're almost always doing those IVs after the hyperbaric session so that there's no interference in their overall experience during each one of those sessions while they're in our office. Next, let's talk about CO2, carbon dioxide therapy. Incredibly powerful therapy. I'm a huge fan. I use it myself. We use it with our patients. Where does it fit in and around hyperbaric? Or does it fit in and around hyperbaric? Once again, we've done an entire video on CO2 alone, so we'll link to that video in the description below. But for the purposes of this video, let's just understand that oxygen, particularly pressurized oxygen, is a vasoconstrictor. It narrows blood vessels. Carbon dioxide is a vasodilator. It opens up blood vessels. There's been a thought, and I get a lot of questions about this. when can I do CO2 therapy? Because hyperbaric is vasoconstricting. I want to open my blood vessels to make sure I'm getting all the oxygen that I can get. Conceptually, that makes sense. But one of the most important risks to really understand well with regard to hyperbaric is central nervous system oxygen toxicity. So part of that vasoconstriction that occurs when you're in the chamber is really to protect your brain and your central nervous system. Vasodilating before or during those sessions, especially if you're going to moderate or high pressures, can really increase the risk of central nervous system oxygen toxicity, something you absolutely want to avoid. CO2 is also a hormetic stress, just like hyperbaric is a hormetic stress. Utilizing hormetic stressors in a health optimization program makes perfect sense. To me, that's exactly what I'm looking to do at all times. It's just the hormetic stress needs to be strategic and controlled. Too much of either one or combining too many stressors simultaneously, even though each stress is considered safe and effective on its own, in combination, this is one that really can become dangerous. So similar to something like the oxidative IVs, for me, if I'm doing CO2 therapy, it might be alternating days. Hyperbaric on Monday, CO2 on Tuesday, hyperbaric on Wednesday, CO2 on Thursday, as an example. Or certainly, it's not going to be CO2 before and it's not going to be CO2 during ever, but we could utilize CO2 after the fact, particularly if we wait 30 minutes to an hour or more after the hyperbaric session. The CO2 becomes the perfect type of hormetic stressor, could even help drive additional oxygen into the cell. There could be great synergy there as long as it's been separated from the hyperbaric session. Lastly, we're going to talk about red light therapy and PEMF. Again, not going into detail around red light therapy or PEMF. We've done entire videos on those topics. My concern here is that there are different types of red light devices and PEMF that people are importing into the chamber itself. When it comes to the hyperbaric environment, we should consider the inside of that chamber almost a sacred space. We have to be very careful with what we're putting inside that chamber at all times. There are very specific codes to how much electricity is allowed to be inside of a chamber from a voltage and amperage standpoint. There's also very specific rules and regulations about not having battery-operated devices inside that chamber. If you've been keeping up at all with any of the hyperbaric news over the last year or so, a recent hyperbaric accident actually included a number of battery-operated devices inside the chamber. I love red light. I love PEMF. We utilize both of those regularly in our office. I utilize both of those regularly in my life, but I never utilize them in my own life or in my office during a hyperbaric session. First of all, red light gives off heat. In the hyperbaric environment, it's already warm. Adding additional heat to an already warm environment is a recipe for disaster. If it's a battery-operated red light device or somehow a battery-operated PEMF, it's an absolute zero tolerance. And if somehow we were running PEMF into a chamber, it would have to fit inside the guidelines of voltage and amperage. And most of the devices out there will not fit that requirement. For us, in most cases, we're going to do red light right before a session, particularly at mild to moderate pressures, and red light after the session if we're going to higher pressures. Again, red light, similar to CO2, is a vasodilator. So especially at higher pressures, too much red light, either before or potentially somehow during, would be an increased risk of central nervous system oxygen toxicity. So the safest answer would be utilizing red light after the fact. And PEMF, quite honestly, could be right before or right after. There's great synergy between red light and PEMF. There's great synergy between red light, PEMF, and hyperbaric. So having those in some type of sequence around the hyperbaric session is incredibly powerful and could certainly be considered, but absolutely not during the session itself. I know that there are a number of devices on the market, I've seen them, where hyperbaric chambers are now trying to combine some of these other modalities simultaneously. I promise you that none of those chambers are going through the rigorous testing and certification process. And as a result, those chambers are not approved for human use. And quite honestly, those chambers and other chambers like that are one of the reasons we're having so many issues inside the hyperbaric industry currently. As this world of health optimization has continued to grow, as there's so much new technology out there for us to utilize, stacking these therapies to save time or to save money or just to get that synergy is something so many of us are looking for. And again, I'm not trying to discourage the use. I'm just trying to help you understand that all of these therapies, if they're valuable at all, are pushing very specific pathways. If we're pushing pathways that are synergistic and they're safe to do so, we'll get more out of the therapy. But if we're pushing therapies that negate each other, we're actually losing the benefit. God forbid we start combining therapies that are actually unsafe and now increasing our risk to have other health issues, well, what would be the point of that? In this video, I'm just trying to give you some guidance to understand that combining therapies randomly is not a great idea. You need to have thought and strategy when you're creating a health optimization program, whether it's for somebody sick who's trying to recover or someone who's moderately healthy trying to really optimize their health and their biology. It's all the same from a stacking standpoint, and strategic planning is necessary. I hope this helps answer some of the questions around stacking. I hope this helps you get a better idea of what should or shouldn't be combined and when. I appreciate your time and attention, and I'll see you on the next video.